I would like to tell you about the best idea I have ever had.
I have the number 6 top app in the App Store. This isn't like a sub list. This is the whole store.
The whole App Store, it's number 2.
The number 1 app, above ChatGPT, above TikTok, above Google, above Instagram, above all of these boys. Focus friend. I'm just like hacking the brain.
Hank Green is a YouTuber, author, science communicator, and many other things. And today, we're going to talk about ADHD and what it actually is. Then, we're going to talk about Hank Green's app and how it actually works. Then, we're going to talk about the connection between the two and unveil the psychological tricks that Hank uses to trick you into focusing. Now, we all know what ADHD kind of is. In fact, if you clicked on this video, you probably think you have it yourself or someone you know may have it. And usually you get similar sorts of stories, at least if you go on Reddit r/ADHD, you'll see the same sort of themes come up often about people with ADHD and what they experience on a daily basis. And when most people think about ADHD, they probably just think about, yeah, well, that person has ADHD and they just struggle to pay attention. But it's a little bit more than that. For example, some shared experiences of people with ADHD include the following: putting something in a safe place, or at least something that you thought was in a safe place at the moment, and then not being able to actually find it when you need it. You don't know where it is. Constantly having unfinished projects, meaning you get really excited about doing something, oh, I'm gonna do this big thing, and then you start doing it, but you never finish it because then you get excited about the next thing, and then you put all your time and passion into that instead. People with ADHD tend to procrastinate at least much more than the average Joe, and they also tend to have extreme time blindness, meaning it's hard to perceive time accurately. For example, maybe it's like, oh, I think this task will take me this long, but really it's way longer. Or I think it'll take us this long to walk to this destination, or maybe it's way shorter. Or even just you're completing a task and you completely lose track of time. Another common experience is this weird feeling, which is kind of hard to understand if you've never experienced it yourself, but it's this idea where maybe you're just doing nothing. You're doom scrolling, you're just chilling, but in your mind, you are screaming at yourself that you need to do this work. You have something important or some task that you must be doing, but you are screaming at yourself internally, yet externally, you're doing nothing, and you're beating yourself up for it in your head, and you want to do this thing, but you feel like you almost can't move, or you feel like you just can't do that thing, even though you want to do the thing. Now, a lot of these symptoms like procrastination or unfinished projects or even time blindness might sound like, well, yeah, everybody experiences that. But the point is that with ADHD, these things are heightened. They go beyond just what the normal person may experience, and or people with ADHD experience these symptoms much more often than would your average person. It's one thing for us to kind of know what ADHD is in our head, but it's a different thing when you actually talk to the mental health professionals and how they would characterize it. And also, how do you get diagnosed with ADHD? Like, how does a mental health professional know that you are someone who has ADHD and this person over here does not? In fact, the definition or the characterization of ADHD put forth by the American Psychological Association doesn't include any of these symptoms in it. These are not things that you must experience to be someone who has ADHD. According to the American Psychological Association, ADHD is a behavioral syndrome characterized by symptoms which impair social, academic, or occupational functioning. Now, there are two parts to ADHD: the attention deficit part and the hyperactivity part, or the AD and the H. And then the last D is just for disorder, to summarize the whole thing. To diagnose mental disorders, psychologists lean on what is effectively a big book called the DSM-5, which lays out how each mental disorder can be diagnosed by a professional. And according to the DSM-5, the criteria for the inattention part of ADHD are the following: things like making careless mistakes or being extremely forgetful, often getting distracted, trouble holding attention, or maybe even avoiding large tasks. On the other hand, hyperactivity symptoms include things like fidgeting or constantly needing to leave your seat, having trouble being seated for long periods of time. The constant feeling of being on the go, or the desire to run around or even climb things, or even talking too much, or blurting out often, or having trouble not interrupting others. Now, for you to be officially diagnosed with ADHD, either as inattentive, hyperactive, or both, then these symptoms must be present for more than 6 months, must have started occurring before the age of 12, must be present in at least 2 different settings, for example, work and school and being at home or on the bus or something, just 2 different settings in your life. These symptoms must cause clear interference with your social, academic, or occupational functioning. And as with all mental disorders, your symptoms must not be better explained by a different mental disorder or a different conjunction of mental disorders. Now, hopefully this paints a good picture of what ADHD actually is, but are people with ADHD just like doomed forever? Yes and no. Like most mental disorders, ADHD is best treated by a combination of therapy and medication. Although everyone I've personally ever met with ADHD has only really been treating it with like medication, the most common of which seems to be Adderall, which is a brand name of amphetamines. Amphetamines, like Adderall, are stimulants, which means they speed up brain activity. Specifically, amphetamines stimulate your central nervous system, or your brain and your spine, to increase neurotransmitters like dopamine and norepinephrine by inhibiting their reuptake. Now, if you're not familiar with psychology, that might seem just like a lot of fancy words and jargon thrown down your throat. So let's break that down a little bit. Of the two, you've probably heard of dopamine before, and people often get it a little confused for something like happiness. Dopamine can be thought as your brain's little treat for rewarding you for accomplishing stuff. Every time you do that task for your boss or finish your homework or have a hard workout at the gym, you get that feeling of accomplishment from the dopamine hit. Dopamine is also largely responsible for a feeling of motivation or your drive to want to do work in the first place. Norepinephrine, on the other hand, is related to arousal, not sexual arousal, you dirty scoundrel. More in the sense of attention, wakefulness, heart rate, blood pressure, even memory retrieval. Now, it's not necessarily that people with ADHD have inherently less dopamine or less norepinephrine in their system. It's more so that the systems in their brain that deal with dopamine and norepinephrine are certainly dysfunctional. But what if you're like me and you're broke and you can't necessarily afford to get diagnosed? And even if you did, you couldn't afford to get medication or seek professional help on a consistent basis, and you're short and you live in a basement. Well, this is exactly where Hank Green comes in. Although he can't make you be less short or get you out of the basement, but he can help you focus on your work. And honestly, ADHD or not, everyone struggles to just sit down and do work that they don't want to do. So how does Hank Green help? Well, he created a free app called Focus Friend, which has a very simple premise.
An app that installs a bean on your phone. The bean that you put on your phone really wants to spend more time knitting. And so you can give it an amount of time that it can spend knitting, but you can't touch your phone while it's knitting. And if you do, it'll drop its stitches and be sad.
Yeah. If you have deep focus on, you can hit start and then you are locked out of your apps.
So you have it now.
Yes.
And you can't hit any other apps.
No, cannot. You're out.
But if you let it knit, it will make socks and scarves, and then you can trade socks and scarves in for furniture for the bean's room. It's called Focus Friend. You don't have to make an account, there are no ads, we don't collect any data, and it's free.
So essentially, for as long as the timer is on, you've just turned your smartphone back into a flip phone. Now, of course, if you want to use your phone as normal again, you could stop the timer whenever you want, but there's some psychological tricks at play to try to make sure that you do not do that. Candidly, I've only used the app for a few days because I was pretty skeptical about it at first, but honestly, I love it. Hashtag not sponsored, but I wouldn't mind it. Me personally, whenever I'm doing work that I really don't want to do, honestly, I didn't realize how often I picked up my phone. The other day, I set my timer on Focus Friend for an hour. In that hour, I picked up my phone more than 10 times to try to like quickly doom scroll Twitter or TikTok, like without even a second thought, without even realizing it. And as I pick up my phone, I realized, oh wait, yeah, it's essentially like a brick. And then I just go back to work. And I've honestly just never felt more productive in my entire life. Why does this app work so well? Well, these are the psychological tricks that the app uses on you suddenly in a sneaky way, but sneaky in a good way to help you stay focused. The first thing you'll notice, although it's a small thing, is that if you try to stop the timer, you're gonna make the bean sad. And I know the bean's not a real person, but it does have a little bit of an emotional pull on your brain to make you stop and second guess yourself like, am I really about to make this thing more sad than it was? And it's not real. It doesn't exist. It doesn't have feelings, but it has a face and it's anthropomorphized enough where it's like, okay, I don't want to make it sad. What this app does really well is gamification. It makes your work feel like a game. Earlier, we talked about how people with ADHD struggle with dopamine and the reward centers in their brain. Those are dysfunctional. Well, this app gives you a tangible, immediate award just for focusing on your work. You focus, your timer runs out, and then you immediately are rewarded for focusing for that long, which then incentivizes you to want to do this again in the future so that you can receive more rewards immediately after working to hopefully start forming that habit to get you to keep working. This plays on another struggle of people with ADHD, which is they tend to have issue delaying gratification. They tend to have an issue putting in work, working on something and not seeing the benefits of it for a day, a week, a month, a year later. That tends to be a problem with people with ADHD, but this app solves that problem, or at least addresses it, by immediately giving you a reward, giving you that dopamine hit for completing your work. It's making your work feel like a game, which is something that's been proven to be very effective in addressing ADHD. Although it's a silly made-up beat, Bean, it leverages the psychology behind emotional connection and accountability to an external being or an external person or an external character. These two things in conjunction with each other are often much more powerful as motivators to help people with ADHD go to do things. For example, a person with ADHD in school may not want to do their homework, but if somebody else is counting on them to do their work in a group project, then they're much more motivated to actually get the thing done because they don't want to let down the other group members. The second it's for somebody else, it's like, well, I'm going to do this for somebody else and they're going to be happy and they're going to like me more and that's a reward. And like, I can let myself down, but like, I can't let this other person down. Like that would just be messed up. Additionally, the app plays on the sunk cost fallacy, which is the idea that the more time you put into a task makes you much less likely to abandon the task until you reach the goal. For example, if you set your timer for an hour and you're already 45 minutes through the timer, well, you're much less likely to stop the timer because you only have 15 minutes left. You're almost there. You've already put in this much time already. You might as well finish. Lastly, this app can help you just get started with the task. A lot of times all people, but especially people with ADHD, have a problem where you just don't know where to get started on a task. But by starting a small timer, even if it's only for 10 minutes, then you know you can just start tackling the task a little bit more, a little bit at a time, which makes you seeing the end goal and what needs to be done in the future much more clear. For example, if you have a 10-page paper due and you're like, well, I don't even know where to start with the intro sentence. I don't even know what the title's gonna, I don't know. And you get overwhelmed and you don't do it. And then you lay in your bed and you doom scroll. Well, instead, by just starting the timer, maybe a 10-minute timer, you can just work on your paper for 10 minutes, whatever that comes out as. But as you work on it, it becomes much more clear in your mind what needs to happen next. And the task itself becomes much less scary and you're much more likely to continue to work on it. Now, I'm sure there's even more tricks this app plays on your brain that I might have overlooked. And if as you use the app, you notice them, feel free to leave a comment. Let me know what I missed. If you learned anything from this video or found it helpful at all, consider subscribing or leaving a like. Let YouTube know that you want to see more content like this. And it also lets me know that you want to see more content like this so I can make more stuff like this. And we could all be happy. Also, if you've somehow never heard of Hank Green, you should watch him too. Hashtag not sponsored, but great guy. And his brother. Brother's pretty good too.